Hi guys, I'm going to show you how to make your seed bead bracelets now that you have a completed sketch. So the first thing you want to look for in your kit is you want to look for either a little bag or a little piece of paper that has your beading thread on it. Now in this example my beading thread is white, but I know that I also gave out some beading thread that was black. Some was kind of like a greenish gray, but you're just looking for a material that is like a thin thread. Once you find it, what we want to do is we want to carefully take it off of our card. Now mine has some crimp beads right here, so we're gonna save those for later. I'm so sorry, I just got the ugliest paper cut. It's actually a cardboard cut. I was making all of these boxes for our painting students, filled with canvases, so I was folding a billion boxes, and I got like so many cardboard cuts. It was not really that delightful, but that's okay. So what I'm doing is I'm unwrapping. Now I found out yesterday that my wrist size was 6.5 inches, but I'm gonna cut my thread longer than that because we need more. We need like an extra tail, otherwise it's gonna be super hard to make. So what I would recommend you do, I would say cut at least, I would say like cut 5 to 6 inches more than you need. So for me, I have a 6.5 inch circumference. If I want to add 6 more inches to that, that would be 12.5. Now that just happens to be like double for mine, but I'm just saying don't double yours, just add 6 inches to it. It doesn't need to be doubled. It just needs the extra 6 inches, so that way you're able to hold your thread while you are beading and it won't be super duper annoying for you. Okay, so I cut mine so it's 12.5. So the first thing we want to do is we want to find our clasps. Now I'm using some clasps that I made because I gave you guys all the pre-made ones I had. I am all out. And then the other thing we want to find is our crimp beads. Your crimp beads are going to be small metal beads. They might be silver, or they might be like a brass color or a copper color. You can choose whatever crimp beads you got. It doesn't matter if they're the same color as mine. All right, and what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna take my clasp, and I am gonna go ahead and slip the tail through my clasp. So what we have here now is we have about, how long is this tail? I have about 1.5 inches of tail sticking out. This is why we ended up cutting some extra just now, because we want to have a tail. So make sure your tail is kind of short like mine, just about 1 inch or 1.5 inches, and we're going to tie a knot so that way our thread is tied to our clasp. So I'm just looping it around my finger. I'm going to pull the tail through the loop. I like to do a double knot just for safety and security. And I got a little knot here. Let me see if I can zoom that in for you so you can really see. Okay, so we have a little teeny tiny knot right here. Now what we're going to do is we're going to take our crimp bead and we're going to slide our crimp bead onto a long piece of thread, and we're going to pull it down until it reaches almost to the clasp. This is the tricky part. We want this tail, this short tail, to also go inside of the crimp bead. So it's crimping them and holding them together. So I'm going to pinch the two threads together and slide the crimp bead over both of them. This might take you a couple tries to get it. So now my crimp bead, it's getting closer to my clasp. You want to push it as close to the clasp as you can get it. All right, so it's very tiny. Here's my crimp bead. It's right next to the clasp. You're trying to put the crimp bead almost like over the knot if you can. So now what we're going to do is we're going to take our pliers and put them on top of the crimp bead and then just squeeze until it flattens that bead. So it should flatten it into a little rectangle. See how it's flat now? It's not a bead anymore. This is gonna hold that clasp tight. All right, that's our first step, and honestly, I would say that's the trickiest part of this project, and it wasn't even that bad, right? So now what we have is we have this tail that's sticking out, and then we have a long thread that our beads are gonna go on. Now don't cut this tail. If you were to cut this tail right next to the crimp bead, probably what's gonna happen is it's gonna just fall out. So we're gonna leave it there. The goal with making a bracelet and making a necklace is your beads should go over the tail and the long length of thread. And that way it's gonna be super secure. It's gonna be really sturdy because it's double thickness right there, and it will be good. I'm just gonna put my little crimp bead back on this piece of tape so I don't lose it, because I will need it at the end. All right, so now that I have my clasp, half of my clasp in place and my crimp bead, I can bust out my sketch and I can hold it up because this is to scale. So now I can see, all right, the first thing on my sketch is black and white beads. I'm gonna do like a stripe pattern. So right here, oh, I don't wanna spill. I'm using my beading mat because seed beads are really roly-poly, so I don't wanna lose them. Now, you might have had a kit that was left over from last semester where you have a beading needle. If you want to use this beading needle, you totally can, but you don't have to. It's not really necessary. I don't really use them, but some people seem to like it. You just thread your thread through the eye of the needle, and then you can put beads on it if you like. So what I'm gonna do, I'm just gonna start working on my pattern, and once I feel like I get the right length of beads, I'm gonna compare it to my sketch. I'll make this into a time lapse for you, so that way you're not having to watch me bead in a really boring way. Ooh, important thing to note. So these very first few beads, they're gonna have to go over this tail, so you'll kind of have to use your finger to guide them. Okay, so I have quite a bit of beads on here. I'm gonna just hold it up to my sketch and compare and see if it takes up the right amount of space. I'm looking at it, and I think I need just one more bead to make it really match. I'm gonna add one more black bead, and then what I notice in my sketch is I have indicated that the next bead used should be a large gold bead. So I'm gonna bust out. You might want to use some of these beads. We've pretty much, I don't know, you can use any of these now that we're done with rings and now that we're done with earrings. The rest of these are all kind of just random for you to decide what you want to do with them. So I'm going to be throwing in some of these little accent beads. All right, I'm going to put in my gold bead. Make sure that it covers up the tail. Okay, now the tail is totally covered up. That part is all donezo. And I'm just looking at my sketch and it says I'm gonna do more black and white pattern. So I'm gonna go ahead and do that. Okay, so now I'm at my next transition point, and it looks like I have drawn that I want to use some red beads in this space. I think I'll do 2 red beads, and then I'm going to transition to just white. It's important to hold it up to your sketch because if you've drawn your sketch to scale, then it's gonna come out so that it perfectly fits you. If you don't compare it to your sketch, what I see happen with, excuse me, that was my dog Scooter. If you don't compare it to your sketch, it's gonna come out kind of like lopsided and not symmetrical. So I had you guys draw these for a reason. It's to make your lives easier in the long run. That way you don't have to like take your bracelet apart, because I never want you to have to do things twice if we can avoid it. Okay, and then now I'm at a section where I'm gonna use more gold beads. Let's see, I had a lot of accent beads in my personal stash, so we're gonna use some of them up today. I'm gonna do a metallic gold. Then I'm gonna do some glass beads. These are called faceted beads because they have multiple cuts on the outside, like a crystal or like a diamond. That's called faceted. It makes them reflective and shiny. All right, so this is like my large focal point. Now, if you notice something where like you are not really liking how the pattern looks, you could go back and change it at this point. For example, in my pattern, I drew that it was just white here. I kind of think maybe it would look better if I had stuck with my black and white pattern, but I'm gonna see how it looks once I add this other side because it's gonna be symmetrical. So I could follow my pattern, or I could count the number of beads. Looks like I did 4 white beads, so that's another way to make it symmetrical, is have each side be a mirror of the opposing side. You know what I mean? You might notice these beads are not super duper consistent. Sorry. They're not the highest quality beads. The school ordered a bunch of them for me before I even got the job. They had ordered all the jewelry supplies, which was very odd. So I have to say, they're not what I would have picked out. But I don't like to be wasteful, you know what I mean? Waste not, want not, so. Okay, we've got our white beads. Now we're gonna do, I think I just need one more because these are not quite as long. Oh, no, it's okay. I feel like for this kind of project, they work fine, so don't stress about it. Going well. Okay, now I'm gonna go back to my black and white section, and I'm already halfway there. Sometimes what you can do to see if it's coming out symmetrically, let me scooch this over, is you can take your bracelet and you can fold it in half and see, do the lengths match up? And it looks like it's matching up pretty good so far. It looks like it's time for me to do my gold bead next. And then some more black and white stripes, and then I'm just about finished with this. Now you don't have to do this stripe pattern that I'm doing. You could opt to do solid colors for different parts of the bracelet. I have a different tutorial where I used solid color sections. That's okay, you can do that. I just thought today I kind of want to challenge myself, and I just like the way it looks. So you do the type of style that you like the look of, because this is your bracelet. So we're not all going to have the same taste in fashion. It would be super boring if we did. I find that actually sometimes in high school, people try to follow the same like trends as each other. And what happens is everyone, you know, ends up wearing like the same clothes, and that can just look a little boring. So try to have your own individual style when you can, even if, you know, kids pick on you a little bit. that's lame. Don't worry about what other people think. Because as long as you're happy and you like it, then who really cares? If kids are going to make fun of you because your clothes are different, then they're kind of lame people. You know what I mean? Or maybe they're just insecure. So you do you, man. Make the bracelet you want to wear. Okay, I'm getting real close to being finished. It's looking pretty symmetrical. Now this part is really tricky because you don't want to drop it. That would be really sad. But you can carefully pick it up and see if it'll fit. Okay, once you're satisfied with the length and it seems like it's going to fit you, then you're going to take the other crimp bead. So remember your tiny metal bead. And that's going to be the very last bead that you put on. So let me see if I can show you how to do that. Go in nice and close. Okay. Be really careful not to drop it at this point. So we're going to thread our crimp bead on. It's going to be our very last bead. There it is, right there next to my black bead. And then I'm going to take the other side of my clasp and I'm going to take my thread and go through the loop in the clasp, kind of like I'm treating it like it's a bead. And then, this is the tricky part. You're going to take the tail of your thread, and this is why we cut so much extra, is it makes this step easier. If you hardly have any thread left at this step, then it's really hard. So take your tail and go down through the crimp bead, and you want to pull it nice and tight. Once you have it nice and tight, you're going to take your pliers, just like we did at the beginning, and just clamp it down so it flattens. Oh, guys, I should have tied a knot. Oh, noodles. There shouldn't be any gap between the clasp and the crimp bead. No gap at all. With your tail, your remaining extra tail, we want to take as much of it as we can and go back through the beads. Now, mine has started to fray a little bit because I made a mistake. So I'm going to try to get this thread through at least an inch of the beads. Now, this is kind of going to be a pain in the butt because my thread has gotten really frayed, but yours probably won't be frayed because you probably didn't make a mistake like I did earlier on. Go through my beads. Okay, I went through one bead pretty well. If you happen to have a little sewing needle, you could totally use that. Okay, and then once you have kind of gone through several of the beads, you can take scissors, and I find the best way to cut this thread is to put the thread between your scissors and kind of pull down. That's going to give you the cleanest cut. All right, and there you have it. That's what a finished bracelet looks like. Here it is. Here's how the clasp hooks together.